Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well tonight. I just wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about for a while now, and I didn't really want to. I didn't really want to do this video just because of the reactions I'm afraid that it'll get. But I think it's an important discussion to have. So, to parallel this, I was raised in a very religious household. And as I got older and after I left the house and I started revisiting what it was I believed, I realized that I didn't believe any of the religion I was brought up with. And that was an uncomfortable thought that I didn't really want to admit. And so I kind of resisted it, didn't think about it. But eventually I just had to sit down and really think hard about it. And in the year 2016, I finally realized I was an atheist, and it wasn't a hard-lined decision. You know, I wasn't completely closed off to any other alternatives, but I realized that was what I believed, and I just had to say it. So I've kind of arrived there with being an anarchist. I think I am, honestly. And it's something that I have resisted. When I first started this channel about a year ago, I was really railing on the few things that I thought the government should do and that it was good at. And I've been proven wrong by a lot of people I've talked to that the government is actually good at those things, because it's really not. So, you know, before I got here, what I thought was, what we should have is a very small government that's limited by the Constitution, because I was already sold on the argument that democracy is immoral because you have the 51% subjugating the 49%. So what you had to have was a constitution to secure everybody's rights. But we've already realized that the government does not follow the Constitution. The Constitution is a piece of paper, and that's all it is now. And that sounds terrible, but it's true. I mean, they don't follow any of the amendments. They just straight up ignore it. So it's completely useless. Well, what's the point? So that idea doesn't work. You know, we've always said that for anarchy or communism to work, we would need to have benevolent people. Well, it turns out to have a constitutional republic, you also need benevolent people, because they're going to follow the rules, and they don't. It's just a joke. The other thing I've realized is that government is a lot like religion. You know, religion is something that if you're a believer, you can't touch, you can't critique. It's an absolute that you can't criticize. And that's exactly what government is like. You know, if the government decides that a law is a law, then you just have to follow along. You have to agree. And if you question it or disobey it, you get punished. And there's not really any recourse for it. So this isn't like a super hard-lined place I've shown up in. But I'm starting to realize that it is the way I think, that government is no better than people deciding things, because the government is just made up of the same corrupt people that would run anything. And they're actually worse. I was thinking about this today. Try to think of anyone you know in your personal life who's as bad as the average person in Congress, or who is as bad as, say, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell. I bet nobody that you know is as corrupt or sleazy or evil as any of those people. But for some reason, they're dictating how we run our lives. So a lot of the realizations I've come to, I've realized that other people have come to them long before me. So I'm starting to do some reading now and I'm really trying to reinforce this philosophy. But it is kind of where I think I'm going, because government is idealistic, just like anarchy is. So the idea of an environmental protection agency sounds great. I support that idea. It makes sense that you have an institution that protects the environment from corporations dumping sludge in the rivers or oil spills. But when you start looking at how these institutions are run and who has bought them out and whom they protect, the entire reason for their existence is negated. Same with like the FDA. They protect the drug companies. They give us poison that we're eating and putting into our bodies, and they legalize abuse from these corporations that they're supposed to be protecting us from. And that's just what government turns into. The whole fear that if we didn't have government is that we'd be just run by a bunch of corporate overlords. That's where we already are. The other argument that I bought into for a long time was that you need a small government, because if you don't have any government, then nature abhors a vacuum, so it'll fill it with something worse. I don't know. We had a small government, and look what it turned into. Like, America was it was an experiment in small government, and look where it got us. So I guess what I would call myself is a pragmatic anarchist right now. So I do not believe in the institution of government. I think it's a false idea. I think that the worst things in history have only been able to happen because of governments. The world wars, genocides, slavery, removal of the Indians from North America. It's a lie to act as though anything could be perfect. So without big centralized governments, there still would have been battles, there still would have been struggles for land, but nothing even close to the scale of what we've had. The Holocaust wouldn't have happened without a strong centralized government. There's just no way. World War I would not have happened without strong centralized governments. It just wouldn't have. So instead of the ideal being a small government with a constitution, my ideal is becoming no government, no federal government at least. Let communities govern themselves, which isn't, it's human nature that you're going to have people who lead, people who have ideas that others follow. You can't escape that. Not everyone's going to be an individualist owning his own farm and having ideals that he's going to, there are going to be people who just collectivize. It's just what we do. But I think decentralizing that as much as possible is what we should be doing. So I'm still going to vote. I had Carrie Wedler on the other night, and she doesn't vote anymore because in her mind, it's enabling the power abuse. I really don't look at it that way. I look at it that way if you're voting for the lesser of two evils, then you are enabling the system. But if you're voting for people who just want to remove government abuse, I don't see that as violence. I see that as the smart thing to do. So I'm going to continue to advocate dismantling state power by electing libertarian-minded people. I think that the way Kerry approaches it is really cool too, through just peaceful disinvolvement and showing alternatives to government. I think that's all great, but I don't think it means you shouldn't vote. I think that, we should vote. I think, I'm losing hope in presidential politics. That is really a dream, I think. I think what we've got to do is we've got to overhaul our state governments and our congressional candidates, and we need to get people who are going to return the power to the states. That's the first step in decentralization. I'm still a fan of peaceful disassembly of this monstrous government. I don't want there to be a civil war or a revolution or whatever. I'd like to peacefully absolve this, and I think the best way to do that is by electing people to the state governments and to federal office from the states to remove federal power and resist federal power. So that's going to really be my goal. I think it also matters how you deconstruct the state. So I was talking with David Feit the other night, and we were talking about Glass-Steagall. And Glass-Steagall, I forget what year it was implemented, but it compartmentalized the banks and also instituted the FDIC, which was the insurance for backing, for the government backing the banks. And then when they repealed it, they only repealed half of it. They only repealed the compartmentalization part, and the insurance remained intact. So now the banks were free to do whatever they wanted with government insurance still. So that's an example where partial deregulation actually isn't fixing the problem. Like you've got to have a method to how you're deregulating and how you're removing state obstructions, because that was a big cause of the 2008 financial crisis, was all the insurance backing the banks, and they could be as reckless as they wanted, and they didn't have the restrictions that the entirety of Glass-Steagall used to hold them back with. So, I don't think just taking a hatchet to the state and cutting whatever you can is going to solve the problem. I talked about this with Dave Smith. Going after food stamps and welfare right now, really, I don't think you're doing anything for liberty. I think we should have a top-down deconstruction approach to the state, removing corporate bailouts, ending the wars, auditing the Fed, and eventually we could reach a place where we have much less of a state. I don't actually ever think we'll reach a stateless society. That would be great if we did, but I don't see it happening. But just removing this enormous centralized monstrosity that we have. So that's where I am right now. And like I said, I'm going to be reading more literature. I'm going to be reading Rothbard's Anatomy of the State. I've heard that that's one you've got to read. And I've been listening to little bits of his and reading little snippets here and there. And I mean, that guy seems to really be speaking my language. So I want to read more of his literature. And like I said, a lot of these people are saying things that they've been saying things for years that I am just starting to realize throughout my life journey. And that's the greatest way to learn, is when you arrive somewhere from your conclusions in your own life, and then you realize that other people have already been saying those same exact things. Something else that struck me is every politician I've ever supported, it's always been for what they're going to end. It's never been for some government policy they're going to implement. Tulsi Gabbard was the most statist politician I've ever supported, and it was for what she was going to end. She wanted to end most of the wars, and the drug war and the surveillance state, decentralize executive power. It wasn't about her Medicare plan. That didn't excite me at all, or her college plan. It wasn't any of those things. It was what you want to get rid of. And I've realized there's really nothing I want to add. And the few things that I thought that need to remain, they've been so compromised that their existence is negated. So unless I can be proven otherwise that, that we could somehow have a constitutional republic that wouldn't turn back into what we have now, if we were going to just execute politicians who don't follow the Constitution or something, I don't know what you do. I just don't see it as viable anymore. I'll get some of the questions here. Non-voting is stupid. It's like forfeiting. I agree. I mean, I that's why I'm still going to vote. I think if you're voting for the lesser of two evils, so if you're one of the people like, oh, we got to get Biden in just to get rid of Trump, then yeah, you are kind of enabling the status quo and the system that exists. But if you're voting for people who want to straight up remove state power, like if you voted for Ron Paul, I don't look at that as enabling the system. If you're going to give banks free money, then you have to regulate them. Better solution is not to give out the free money. Yep. I agree. So that's what I'm saying. Like, sometimes if you can just get a tiny bit of regulation removed without removing all of it, or depending on how you're attacking it, you're not going to do anyone any favors. So it really means you have to be targeted. You have to have a targeted strategy in how you're removing the state, or it'll backfire. Fuck the FDA. I agree. EPA and FDA are a scam to hurt small businesses. That's certainly all they've become, even if even if it seems like they could be something else. Certainly what they've turned into. Peaceful secession and incremental decentralization is the wave. Good video read. Thank you, Kevin. The black flag comes in many colors. Yeah, so I don't know if this is what I'm always going to think, but I am pretty proud of the consistency I've held throughout it's been a wild year, and I've seen a lot of people just take extremely wild moves left and right to try to appeal to audiences, and I really haven't done that. This has been like a slow journey that I've kind of been resisting, and I think it's just an honest statement to say this is what I think. So, libertarians, they get caught in this trap of arguing over stupid stuff, as if we're living in Ancapistan right now already, talking about whether, cannibalism could possibly be voluntary, or, if circumcision should be legal, or, it's dumb. Like, we shouldn't do that. So I'm really not going to be going off on some crazy anarchist tirade for the rest of my videos. I think that all the issues that I've been talking about are still the most important. The state-sanctioned violence has to end, so the wars, immigration, detention, imprisoning people for smoking weed, the lockdowns, all this type of stuff, it's got to go. And that's still a priority. And it will be for a long time, because I don't see us getting much better. So let's keep the message consistent. Let's focus on what matters. But I'm just being honest with you guys. That's kind of where I've ended up, that I really don't think that I think government is a failed, what did I say on Twitter the other day? Government is a failed social experiment. It just doesn't work. And you have to believe that people are good to believe in government. That's actually what I've found, because I don't believe people are good. So I don't think that anarchy would be some utopia where everybody gets along all the time. No, I think it would be like the Native Americans before the white man came. And, that was not harmony. There was a lot of fighting that happened, but nothing on the scale that was happening in Europe. I mean, like the Crusades, or the the scale was much more ridiculous, where there were strong governments. In North America, there wasn't any strong governing system, and there was still problems, but not even close to the atrocities that were happening in Europe, and not close to the atrocities that happened once we made it over here, and what we were doing to the Indians, and what we were doing with the slave trade, and all that stuff is completely enabled through governments. And everything that the left hates about corporate power and corporate managing of the economy, that's all been enabled by the government too. So I just don't see a strong argument for using government as a solution. It seems to cause all the problems. So yeah, that's my video. Thanks for watching. I'll probably talk about this occasionally, but like I said, nothing about my messaging is really going to change. It's going to be about ending state-sanctioned violence and moving toward a more peaceful society. But thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next video.